So there is a possibility that AI will become a real burden to our environment very soon, especially if technology isn't adapted to reduce the amount of water that it's using, reduce the amount of energy that it's using. Right now, though, I would say that beef, in terms of land use, in terms of water use, in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, in terms of biodiversity loss, pesticide, fertilizer, biocides, is still a much larger contributor to environmental degradation than AI. But then people twist that when I say that, and they say, okay, so I can use AI all day, every day, and as long as I cut back on my beef intake, that's good. But the two aren't mutually exclusive. You can do both. You can eat less beef and also use AI less frequently.
The problem isn't that people don't care about their health. It's because they care too much about the wrong people telling them how to do it. This week we have Sapna Peruvemba back on the podcast. And if you don't know who she is by now, that's on you. But go back and watch the whole episode. But welcome back. If you're new here, welcome legends. I'm Callum Weir. And this is the Plant Fueled Podcast. In this episode, we're looking at the actual evidence, rather than just picking a charismatic idiot to believe it. Right, this episode, I want to be straight with you before we get into it. I went into this conversation already thinking that I knew where we were going with it. Misinformation in nutrition, online credibility, who to trust. I cover this stuff consistently. I've written about it, I post about it. It is genuinely probably part of my personality at this point. So I was not expecting to finish this conversation and sit here thinking about. We talk about how misinformation actually spreads. Not just that it exists, but the specific mechanisms of how to get past the people who genuinely think they're being critical thinkers. We get into the Dunning-Kruger effect of wellness culture, which if you've ever argued with anybody online about carnivore, you probably would have experienced this firsthand. We talk about food industry lobbying, the gap between what the research says and what actually reaches the public, and how the system is more or less designed to keep you confused because confused people buy things. We then talk about cheese caves, where the US government has been stockpiling surplus cheese in literal underground caves to prop up the dairy industry. I could not make that up and wouldn't want to either, because nothing I could invent is funnier than the actual truth. This is the kind of conversation I'd send to someone who already thinks they figured out who to trust online, because that confidence is exactly where it starts to go wrong. Right, legends, if you're enjoying what we're doing here, make sure to subscribe, rate, review, give a star rating. Whatever the platform you choose allows you to do. It takes 10 seconds. Costs nothing, and means that this gets in front of people who want evidence rather than another wellness bro with a beef tallow sponsorship. Those are real, by the way. We live in very strange times. So let's dive in with Sapna Peruvemba. Peace and plants. Sapna, welcome back.
Hello, Callum. It's good to be here again.
I actually think last time you came on the podcast was literally just over a year ago. So I think it was probably March, April time. And now we're back here.
Yeah, it feels like so much has changed, but also I'm in the same exact place, same location and everything.
Yeah, I think since then, like obviously I've I came to obviously Los Angeles. I met you and I met Arjun, and then left Bali, went to Los Angeles, came back, and now living in Germany with a whole different life. which so much has happened in that whole entire year.
Yeah, there's so much that's happened. I'm so curious about what it's like for you living in Germany compared to living in London before, and then before that in Bali. Like,
It's so different because I think one, there was a language barrier in like Bali, but it's a very touristy place, whereas I'm now in the non-touristy part of Germany. So I'm just in
hmm,
like it's called Tübingen, and it's kind of like a university town, and I don't understand any of what's going on around me. Like I absolutely love it here, but everything's in German. I know lack of German. I know how to order bread at the supermarket. But in comparison to London, it's so much nicer. It's so much more laid back. It's just a beautiful change of scene. It's very different from Bali because obviously no beaches and no kind of like quote unquote paradise. And obviously very different from Australia as well. But it's just it's a whirlwind experience because I don't think, obviously, when I met you last year, I had zero idea that in less than a year I'd be living in a place where I can't speak the language. I don't know how to really get around. I can order bread and be in a relationship. Like, I had no idea these things were going to happen.
You just have to bring Sarah with you everywhere you go to translate and help you get around.
It literally is that, and luckily for her, she speaks four different languages. So she speaks Luxembourgish, where she's from, Luxembourg, German, French, and English. So every
Wow.
time, I think she can speak maybe Dutch as well, not as fluent. However, so she goes in between different conversations, and I'm so confused. But she'll go speaking Luxembourgish to her kind of like parents, and then people on the street will be German, and then into me, which will be English. And now I think she uses English more because she has to, because I live with her.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, she translates everything, and then she has to kind of like I really appreciate it because she has to turn around and literally have the conversation, then turn around, explain to me what's going on, and then keep having those conversations. So remarkable that is. I can't even figure out how to speak. Like, I can speak a ish second language, Spanish,
Mm.
but not fluently and not to the level of like fluent in every other language like she can. So it's crazy.
It's so hard to learn another language. It really is. I hope that it'll be easier for you because you're actually in that country and then you get to immerse yourself in that. It's a
Hmm.
lot harder when you're in an English speaking country and trying to learn Spanish or Hindi or whatever
Yeah.
it is.
If I went back to when I was in secondary school, we used to have like mandatory French lessons, but it was always taught by a French teacher who didn't know any French at all and just read out the book. So it's always somebody that had zero idea of what they were telling us anyway, and then would give up halfway through and just put on a film instead. So I also, in those like 3, 4 years, learned zero French apart from bonjour, je m'appelle.
That's wild.
Hmm. I don't know that, like in the States, like, do you get taught a language, like, or a secondary language? I'm guessing it's probably Spanish if you do.
We get to choose between Spanish and French. And yeah, I learned Spanish in junior high and high school, and I cannot speak at all. So it's really tough, and I've tried Duolingo and Rosetta Stone and tried to keep up with it. And I also I listen to so much Spanish language music, but it doesn't help. Like none of it helps.
Yeah, I I tried Duolingo for so many different like languages, and because the first things it teaches you as well is like the horse wears shoes in like a different language. I'm like, oh well, I'm never gonna use this. I'm never gonna use the horse wears shoes or like the bear is you wearing a suit. I'm like, I'm not gonna use this. I'm giving up because it's not helpful. So hopefully at one point I can, pick up some German. I mean, I managed to walk in the other day and order bread fluently. So we're getting there.
Wow.
I mean, it's about 4 words, so I'm giving myself too much credit there. It's 4 words, and then they asked me a secondary question after that, and I was so lost because I had no idea what it was.
But are they nice about it when you try to speak the language, or do they correct
Oh
you
yeah,
and
yeah. Germans are also like majority of them fluent in English anyway.
Hmm.
Um, so they respect me for trying, and then they look at me, kind of smirk, and then kind of maybe put out a little giggle and then just speak to me in English. I'm just like, okay, like, I'm just trying here, guys.
That's funny.
But yeah, it is nice. However, it is a beautiful country. I haven't overly explored too much of it. However, it's very close to Stuttgart. So
Hmm.
that's as far as I've really gone is Tübingen and Stuttgart. And years ago, went to Berlin. The rest of Germany is a complete mystery to me.
Yeah, I always see these lists of the most vegan-friendly tourist destinations or so on, and Berlin, Frankfurt, Hamburg, they're always on that list. So I'm
Oh,
curious to know, yeah, like I want to know how vegan-friendly is Germany, especially the part where you are.
I think it's probably one of the most vegan friendly countries I've ever been to. Like, you go to a supermarket,
Mm.
everything is labeled as vegan. Like, there's no kind of like if and what or kind of like this kind of accidentally vegan. They're just very, forward and be like, hey, it's vegan. And people don't seem to care. But you get vegan versions of literally everything, and it's great. Which is also annoying because now there's like they've got really good vegan chocolate here, and I'm like, oh fuck, like, I love it. But also when I first got here, I picked up a bar, and next thing I know, I was eating like a bar every single day while I was here. I've had to stop. However, like, you can just pick up things easily, like, vital wheat gluten or nutritional yeast or, Callum is all just staples in a German supermarket.
Mm.
Um, Everything is just kind of easy to access. Huge amounts of tofu, huge amounts of tempeh, huge amounts of like every kind of variation of plant meat you can think of. You've got like I don't think there's anything that you cannot get. I think it's just incredible. And then restaurants, I don't eat out too much, but there's never been an issue, and there's always been good vegan restaurants as well. So it's always been, I would say, yeah, very accommodating in comparison to some. Like, for instance, I when I went to Berlin a few years ago, I was like, oh my God, like Berlin's really vegan friendly. And I thought maybe that's just because it's the capital. I don't know if it goes out to the rest of Germany. And it probably doesn't to all like parts, but especially in the uni towns and big cities, I definitely think it's probably one of the most vegan friendly countries, par London, par Los Angeles or
Mm.
California in general, and New York.
Wow, I'm so jealous.
You need to get over. Like, you are absolutely welcome to be here. Come, we'll look after you.
Yeah, I want to. I want to travel more. I think I'm just waiting until my program is over and then I can do whatever I want and definitely will leave California at that point.
Yeah, I mean, how is that living in like Loma Linda? Because Loma Linda's like obviously like pushed as this very kind of vegan friendly, whole foods, plant based, blue zone. Everybody's going to live into their hundreds. Might be a cult. How is that? Like, is it very much as they say it is, or is it kind of like it's maybe a pushed a bit more online than it actually is?
Uh, I think it depends on where you go. If you're in the university area, it is very much like that documentary. Um, it is very cool to be there and to go to classes and have my professors all be 70, 80 years old and still teaching, or go to the gym and have the instructor for the class be 3, 4 decades older than me and able, like, so much more fit than I ever could be. And so that part is really cool to see high functioning older adults. And people are always out walking, even when it's really, really hot out here. The all of the options in the university and in the hospital are vegetarian. So that part is really cool. I also love the Adventist owned grocery stores because, like you mentioned with the plant-based meats, there are so many plant-based meats here that I'd never even heard of before I came here. Like vegan deli meats, vegan slices of turkey and ham and bacon and like all of those, every possible kind of meat alternative you can imagine is there. So that part has been really, really exciting. But it is also a very small town. And outside of the university and the hospital system, there isn't, and the churches, there isn't much to do here.
Hmm. Yeah, that's the thing, but like it's one of those places that I was in my head when I was over there. I was like, do I come visit like Loma Linda? Because obviously you've seen it in the documentaries and things like that. And then obviously you told me that there's actually not much to do. It's very much just, you know, a little kind of like small town village. Is it a city? I don't know if it is a city. I don't know what it is, but like, and there's not a huge amount to do.
Yeah, I mean, a day trip, definitely. If you stay in LA and you want to come up here for a day trip, it is fun to get to go to the different stores and see all the plant-based options or the Blue Zone foods, the Loma Linda food brands, or to go to Drayson Center, which is that gym, that famous gym, and just see what that's like. Go to the university and get some like vegetarian options, or go to the hospital. They have great vegetarian food options there too. But yeah, outside of the university and the hospitals, it's a tiny town, 20,000 people.
Mm. And I feel like those people are probably a lot older as well. I feel like I don't know what it is that makes me. I'm just assuming they say it is a population of older people than it is younger people.
Yeah, I mean, the younger people are the people who work in the hospitals and all of the students. And then the older people are kind of in the nearby communities. They're going to be older. So it's like 20 something year olds and then 80, 90 something year olds, you know.
I actually, so when I was with you last time, you mentioned that at one point you were hoping that your TikTok or your Instagram reels take off, and they have. They've taken off quite significantly. However, obviously, with your information going somewhat viral, comes all the trolls, all the kind of, you know, people saying this isn't true, saying, that you're spreading vegan propaganda, that I've been through some of the comments earlier. And like the same as obviously, I think TikTok's probably the worst for it more than Instagram. TikTok is mental on there. Like
Hmm.
how are you finding that now? Because obviously the information's great and it's getting out of there, but it's like that it comes with like the downside of obviously with people just not understanding like basic science or basic nutrition and then
Hmm.
taking it upon themselves to be like, hey, this is not true because blah 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 whatever it is. And then when they you read it out loud, it's kind of like, oh, they just pulled this out of nowhere and it's probably the one brain cell that they're having all between them.
Yeah, I think for me, I actually really appreciate it, which is such a weird thing to say. I know that. But it shows me where the current uh, American or global knowledge is at, because we are so specialized. We have such a high level of education, and this is our background. So I guess sometimes we just assume that everyone knows the same things that we do. But the reality of the matter is that a lot of people don't know the basics as to how their food is grown or where their food even comes from. And we're trying to teach them about all of these advanced topics related to the latest nutrition research and all of the different nutrients and so on. And so it just gives me the opportunity to take a step back and look at the whole picture and see where people are actually starting from. And even if it is framed in a negative way, I also appreciate it because I think before, when I wasn't reaching a lot of people, everyone I would reach would be within my audience. So they would be family, friends, people who are already vegan, people who already had a nutrition background, and it would just be an echo chamber of people agreeing with me. And so I actually like to see the people who have that disconnect, or people who are or being negative because it shows me that I'm reaching people outside of that circle who actually need to hear this information, even if it is uncomfortable for me. And then it shows me that now I can, it's kind of a cycle too, because when I see that someone is saying oh, soy is bad because of blah, 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 then I make another post about that and it gives me content ideas for the future.
Yeah, I think it's a great way of seeing where also the education is around food, because there's so much kind of like misinformation out there now from every different, wherever you look. You can kind of look at, like, the carnivore movement. We can even look at our own movements. There's misinformation in like the vegan movement and the whole food plant-based movement. Like, I'm not going to deny that. You look at a carnivore, the raw milk, the like everything, the American food pyramid, all all of these things. Like, it's so confusing for the average person, and especially when you don't know anything about nutrition and you're being told this from like either the TV, which is for a lot of people a trustworthy source, or they're listening to Joe Rogan, or they're listening to whatever. Like, it's hard to get through what actually is evidence-based and what isn't evidence-based.
Yeah, I agree. I think it can even mislead us as the health professionals or experts in that field. So I can't imagine how confusing it is for the average person to understand.
Mm. Yeah, especially when you go online and you post anything. Apparently everything's seed oils and whatever else these days. I'm like, I don't care overly too much about the whole seed oil conversation. What I do care is if you please stop drinking raw milk, because you're very much like, I think, let's start there. What's the issue with raw milk?
Raw milk is a public health concern, to say the least. I mean, raw milk has listeria, salmonella, E. coli, all sorts of dangerous foodborne pathogens. And the process of pasteurizing that milk, which just means heating it up to 160 degrees or something like that, it just kills off those pathogens so that we don't get sick from those, we don't get foodborne illness. And I think that people maybe think that pasteurization is something different because they don't understand it. So maybe they think that pasteurizing the milk changes its nutrient composition. I've heard things like that it changes that, or it affects the health profile or something. It kills off the probiotics in the milk or something like that. But we really don't see any significant difference in nutrient composition between raw milk and pasteurized milk.
Yeah, just apart from the fact that one's probably more likely to kill somebody than which
Yeah.
I think, which is one of these things that's obviously pushed around, and it is a certain demographic of people that kind of pushing that raw milk isn't bad, and it's a government conspiracy that somebody banned raw milk because it was good for us, and then it's there's so many different kind of like theories, but that it seems to be like, and I don't want to say it's America, but it's always America. It's very much that it only seems to be in the States that this is a big thing that we're all kind of jumping on board with. Obviously, you're going to find it in some places in Australia and the UK, but also I think also at the same time there's a bit more education around these things. I'm not going to say there's a lot of education, the education shit around nutrition, but at the moment there's a lot of these influencers that may be kind of like promoting testosterone maxing or whatever maxing, and they're kind of like, hey, if you drink raw milk, it's going to give you testosterone, whereas obviously coming from a mammal, a pregnant mammal would be completely the other way around and estrogenic instead.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's another misconception that came up too, is that I saw some posts saying that raw milk has less estrogen than pasteurized milk, which once again to reiterate, when we look at the studies on estrogen estradiol concentration between raw milk and pasteurized milk, there were no significant differences. I mean, there were slight differences, but they didn't reach statistical significance. So it really doesn't make sense what they're saying, and it is not evidence based.
Mm. And I think people get very concerned about they're not concerned about the estrogen in like mammalian milk, but they're very much convinced that soy milk, tofu, anything else like this is gonna, plummet their testosterone, rise their estrogen when it's very much phytoestrogens, but also the large majority of people just see the word estrogen on the end of something and be like, oh my god, boobs, gonna get soy, gonna be turned into a woman.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't realize how prevalent that misconception was until I posted about it, and it did so well. And I don't know why people are still not able to believe that soy foods are safe and that phytoestrogens have more beneficial health effects than risk. Um, but but yeah, it's crazy to see that a lot of people didn't know that the main source of the mammalian estrogen or estrogen produced by mammals comes from dairy products. Um, yeah,
I think with
it's
oh, go ahead, sorry.
well, I was gonna ask because your social media has really taken off since we last spoke too. By the way, congrats on 50K. That is
Thank you.
crazy. Um, So what have you learned from that too? Like, have you noticed that people are increasing in hate comments, or seeing more trolls, or what has that experience been like for you?
I would it's hit and miss. Some people are learning things. Some people get very defensive, and I think that's the way I come across on social media anyway, is the fact that I am kind of telling you off in a kind of like very sarcastic, very sarcastic British humor. Um, However, Instagram, it doesn't really bother people. People are actually more willing to learn, I think, on that.
Mm.
TikTok, on the other side, they screenshot pictures of my face and post my face back to me. They do the worst position it could be in, where like maybe I was turned slightly, and they've screenshot that and sent the face being like, "You look healthy," and I'm like, "All right," or they're like, "Oh, they look like they're like your health markers don't look great." Like you can't tell somebody's health markers realistically whether they are healthy or not through the screen. Obviously, there's some telltale signs, in some people, but for the large majority of people, they don't know this. It's actually a certain community that seem to have an issue with me, and that is either the carnivore community that's kind of like throwing that we only need raw liver and no fruit and no vegetables to live. Um, Also, the things that we need to be eating shouldn't be cooked. We shouldn't worry about parasites. We should only be drinking raw milk. A glass of raw milk will cure me. And that I'm there's a Reddit post about me the other day as well, which was saying that I was an industry plant.
Mm.
So depending what I think Instagram people are willing to learn. However, on TikTok it's very much a lot of hate. People, I think, just giving very unregulated pieces of nutrition, or pushing it back, and it's very much raw milk, beef, and kind of this new term, goy slop, as well. That seems to
What
be.
does that mean?
Um,
People keep
uh,
commenting that.
so it means that the world is run by Jews. and the processed food industry and vegans and the whole world are run by Jewish lizard overlords. Um,
Okay.
and that are very much control of our in control of our public health. And I get commented I'm a goy slop troll constantly. So I actually don't get anything that informative back
Oh,
on TikTok. It's just very much abuse. I get abuse every single day. I've had death threats.
oh my God.
Being like, if you they're like, if you ever come to Kentucky, I'm like, I'm not planning to. Don't worry. Um, or like, some of them like, oh yeah, if you ever step foot in this place, I'm like, out of all the places in the states I want to go to, that state is not one of them. Um, it's very much there's a huge amount of yeah. TikTok is very much painful. Um, YouTube also, people are kind of in the middle.
Mm.
Instagram, once in a while, get some hate. Apart from that, it's very kind of like happy. People are happy to be learning things, which is really nice because, like, I was hoping what I was saying was educating, and it has been. But obviously, the way it's coming across is it's somewhat helping people. Um, However, prior to that, I had no idea. But yeah, once in a while on Instagram, you'll get, you know, being told that like I'm a Jewish lizard overlord or I'm a Jew, and I'm like, I'm so far from it. But okay, but yeah, I don't think it depending on the platform. It's like it really depends on the kind of like content. But you do figure out where people are so lost
Hmm.
because it's just kind of like, oh, maybe raw milk will solve things. I'm like, it probably won't. But I think like going on from milk, something I've actually learned the other day from you is that cheese caves exist.
Yeah, I went on such a deep dive recently because I don't know, somehow I've been getting away from nutrition. Maybe I just need a break from it. And I've just been going through the history of food in the United States. And I came across this podcast that talked about the dark history of cheese in the United States and how the dairy industry and the U.S. government have worked together for so long. And then I stumbled upon this government cheese caves, and apparently there are just billions of dollars worth of cheese that are in these underground caves in I want to say the middle part of the United States. And I don't think it's open to the public. I think it is kind of hush hush. Some people know about it, some people don't. Some people think it's a conspiracy. And then that just unlocked a whole another a huge bunch of information regarding the government and the dairy industry and how they've been working together for so long. And I even want to make a post about that because I discovered some insane gems. Like, I can't even believe that this kind of thing happens.
It blows my mind that once again, always America. It Why are you storing that much cheese? Like, is there like some sort of reason behind it, or like because it's definitely been there like years and years and years. This isn't like a new thing.
Yeah, well, I think it was in 1949 or something like that. Um, so during the Great Depression, people couldn't afford to buy milk anymore. And to help out the struggling dairy farmers, I think it was President Roosevelt at the time who signed a certain act, Agricultural Act, that would provide subsidies to dairy farmers to keep them in business and help out the US economy. And then that stipulated that if milk sales drop, the government will buy all of the extra milk for the economy. So then I think in the 1970s, there was a dairy shortage, and then President Carter bought $2 billion worth of milk over 4 years to save the dairy industry. And that is so much milk. They had to convert it to cheese to extend its shelf life, and it was like 1.4 billion pounds of cheese or something like that. And then they thought, oh, where are we going to store all these this cheese? And they saw that there were limestone mines, and they converted that to underground caves, and that's where they've been storing the cheese for all of these years. And then it becomes even wilder when you realize, like, I went down this rabbit hole and I found that to the Clinton administration, like, it just goes from administration to administration. They're trying to get rid of all this dairy, and they formed the Dairy Management Incorporation or something, which is a marketing group to get Americans to eat more dairies to kind of like get rid of all of that cheese. So they spent millions of dollars partnering with fast food chains like Wendy's, Taco Bell, Domino's to add more cheese into their fast food items. Like, I think, let me see, the Taco Bell Quesalupa, Pizza Hut stuffed crust pizza, and like Wendy's Cheddar Lovers Bacon Cheeseburger were all part of that initiative to add more cheese into the American diet.
Oh, I don't even know where to start. But to be fair, maybe this is why RFK Jr. is promoting having a very high cheese and high meat diet in your fucked up upside down food pyramid, to
Yeah.
now get rid of this. I mean, it would like what is your take on the new food pyramid? Because that's like a whole like that's a whole nother issue within itself. Like I actually did an episode with Dr. Michael Clapper on the food pyramid
Mhm.
a few months back, and obviously he was revolted by it, as he would be. I yeah, what is your take on it? Because I feel like everybody in the same nutrition space seems to have the same. Where are the beans? Where are the where are the grains? Why is it very much red meat and dairy?
Mhm. I think that the US food guide and dietary guidelines in general are so far behind that of most other national food-based dietary guidelines. And I didn't realize how bad it was until I actually looked into other national food guides to see if maybe are we the only ones still promoting full fat meat and dairy products. And yeah, we kind
Yeah,
of
you are.
it's I didn't realize, like, the United States is ahead in so many other areas, but when it comes to dietary guidelines, we're so far behind compared to, like, I don't know if you've seen the guidelines from the Nordic countries, Denmark, Sweden, Norway. They
Mhm.
explicitly mention to limit red and processed meat. And they talk about the environmental sustainability aspects of diet, and even mention things like choosing seasonal foods, reducing food waste, and all of these things. Whereas we've been pushing since 1980, since the first US dietary guidelines came out, it has never featured environmental sustainability. And there has never been a limit on red processed meats, full fat dairy products, anything like that. It's always been on, and I think this goes back to how the dietary guidelines process happens, where the scientific committee all meets and they decide that these should be the guidelines based on the science. And then they open it up to industry lobbying, and then you see all of that language gets changed. The dairy group, the meat group all become so much bigger. And it's crazy when you think about it that I think because of that lobbying, instead of saying we should limit full fat dairy and meat products, they changed it to we should limit saturated fat intake so that they're not putting the blame on any specific food product, which could then decrease their that industry's profits. I guess it's the same thing with sodas, sugar sweetened beverages. They say limit added sugar, not limit sugar sweetened beverages. So it's just crazy to see how far behind we are compared to others. Even the German food guide, I love it. It's like, I don't know if you've seen it, it's the nutrition circle, and 75% of that is
Yeah.
plant-based foods.
Yeah. I think, the States is probably the only like country still promoting like red meat and dairy as like the top thing. Like the German one, the English Canadian guidelines, the Norwegian guidelines, Denmark guidelines, like all these are what I feel like should be normal dietary guidelines that actually go with the science and the general consensus or the worldwide kind of like scientific view on food. However, it's kind of like, but I don't like. I know Canada's guidelines changed when they banned lobbying from food groups, and when theirs changed. Whereas, well, you're a capitalistic country, so I'm guessing if it's not making money, then it doesn't really count.
Yeah, I think from a scientific perspective, the ideal scenario would be to ban lobbying, but I don't see that ever happening in the United States. So,
If obviously you'd actually have to get like every American to kind of follow the guidelines for this, like hypothetically, because nobody realistically, the majority of America aren't following the guidelines in the first place. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in a position of 1 in 2 people being obese. However, if everybody was to hypothetically follow the guidelines to the exact, would America become healthier? Like if they cut out all the process, if they all went to beef tallow and just only ate red meat and things like this, would they become healthier, or would it just cause another load of issues?
I think it depends on which food guide, which dietary guidelines report you're talking about. Um, so with the My Plate, for example, and the previous dietary guidelines, there have been studies that show that if we were to adhere to more closely to the dietary guidelines, that we would improve our diet quality, we would decrease our risk for certain chronic diseases, and would also reduce the environmental burden of diet as well. So I think that just simply following our national dietary guidelines could improve our health and planetary health as well. And I think that could also be said for the current dietary guidelines, because the food pyramid directly contradicts the actual dietary guideline report. So if people weren't following the food guide, but they were just following the report, they would probably be fine. It's just, yeah, because there are so many contradictions where they say you should eat beef tallow, lard, full fat dairy, and meat products, but then it's still recommended to keep total saturated fat to less than 10% of total calories.
Which is impossible to do, right?
Yeah,
If you're eating a full red meat diet, you cannot do it.
especially because that's the only protein source that's even visible on the food guide. There are no beans, like the nuts are so small. There's no tofu or any soy food on there. So yeah, if people just start eating those protein foods day in and day out, there's no way.
Like, I had so much hope because obviously at first the guidelines in the States, as far as I know, obviously go through actual scientific evidence first and like different communities and different cohorts of scientists, and they all came out with a more plant forward diet, and then it got to like the government and they was like nope, and turned it upside down and did whatever. So because I know there was people like Christopher Gardner on the committee and people like that, which are very kind of like plant forward, and I don't think would have recommended that, but then it got passed 3 or 4 times through different stages until it, and obviously lobbying industries, and then all of a sudden at the end came out red meat on top, as usual.
Yeah, and I feel so bad for that team of researchers and experts who worked probably for a year or more on that scientific report. It's such a comprehensive report that they have to put together, and they have weekly meetings which are recorded and so on. I don't know if you saw Dr. Gardner's Instagram post where he explained what his role was in the scientific committee for the dietary guidelines and all of the work that they had to put in just to see that the final report that was released was 10 pages and the food guide is completely different than anything that they recommended. I just can't imagine what they must have been feeling.
Yeah, it must be so disheartening putting all your time and effort into something, having that many years of training, putting that forward, and then somebody like Robert can, like, RFK, coming in and being like, no. And I'm guessing it's probably not all him, but he's a main culprit of it because he's hanging around putting, I don't know what he's doing, like putting fucking gyms in airports instead of actually doing anything fucking significant.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's tough. I mean, it's not like all the other dietary guidelines. It's not like they kept everything from the scientific report in the other dietary guidelines, but at least they got the gist of it. They got most of those main components in that final report,
Mm,
but not this one. And it's really funny
yeah.
because uh, I'm actually, as part of my dissertation research, I'm including. We have a novel food guide that we developed through Loma Linda, and I'm trying to compare it to a well-known national food guide, which I'm gonna use the My Plate for. And I had to justify that. All of my professors were like, "You don't need to justify this to us. We know why you're using the My Plate and not the pyramid." Um, but yeah, I don't really see any healthcare professionals using that pyramid in their, day-to-day patient care or for us, like for research purposes, being able to use that because it goes so against the scientific consensus.
Mm. Yeah, I feel like it feels like you guys are so far ahead in so many certain things, and then obviously it just whenever it comes to the health or wellness of the population, it's just kind of like nah. And then obviously, like whether that be um food or whether that be kind of like whatever else the is coming out of like the White House or the government in general is wild. Like, did you see the video of like RFK and Kid Rock drinking raw milk in a jacuzzi
Yeah.
together? It was a very sad day to have eyes. It was horrible. Like, instead of actually doing anything towards, the health of the people, it's just kind of like, hey, we're going to do shots of raw milk with a known racist. Um, and like, what is America? It's mental.
I know.
Um, However, I say that I say that while still enjoying America and do actually quite like it. To be fair, because I don't like when I go over there. Like we obviously, as Europeans and the rest of the world in general, give America a lot of shit. However, some of the loveliest people and like the friendliest people, it's just there's the overlords in general are just kind of a bit confusing, and I feel very manipulative of the people because I feel like majority of people you meet over there are like some of the nicest people.
Yeah, I think it's tough. It feels like the US constantly goes through these cycles where we are ahead of the game in so many ways, and then we have an administration change, and then we're just kind of put back down, and then we go up again. It feels like no real progress happens. I think it's also tough because in America we have this like US centric worldview where America is like all that we are exposed to. Like if, for nutrition, for example, I didn't even know about the other food guides. I was only taught the pyramid when I was growing up and then the My Plate. We were never exposed to what other countries are doing, and even the possibility that maybe we could learn anything from other countries. So I think that this Americentric worldview has prevented us from being able to progress in many areas. Like for me, with nutrition, public health, environmental sustainability, like we could learn so much. Like I mentioned, from European countries, in terms of environmental regulations, public transport, just like nutrition guidance, all of these things. Um, yeah.
I think even walkability, nowhere's walkable in the States. Like you have to get a car everywhere. Like for instance, like when me, you, and Arjun went for a meal, it took at least an hour to get to the meal. Like even from and it was like not even 12 kilometers away or however many miles that was. It was kind of like from where I was or where we were. And it was nearly an hour to get there. And it's just not a walkable place. Whereas everywhere as far as I'm concerned, in Europe, or as far as I know, sorry, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, is walkable. I think the only place that I'm very aware of that's not as walkable is Australia.
Mm,
Like obviously the cities very much yes walkable. Anything outside of that, no. But even American city, unless you're in New York and some parts of, I'm guessing California, um, then it's very, it's not set out to people to become healthier even by just going for a light walk.
yeah. Yeah, it reminds me too of, I'm sure you get this a lot, but people always tell me, oh, whenever I travel outside of the United States, I feel so much better. My digestion improves, blah, blah, blah. It must be because the food is so much higher quality in Europe or wherever. And I don't disagree, but I also think because in Europe, it is so much more walkable. There's public transport. There's drinking water in places, and you don't have to buy a plastic water bottle everywhere. It People are getting more physical activity in than they ever could in the United States. And they have lower levels of stress. The culture is also different, such that there are many countries where they prioritize taking long breaks or sitting down and enjoying a meal, rather than rushing through it. And all of those things also affect our day-to-day wellness and our overall health. And I feel like the United States is just not conducive to a lot of those aspects of lifestyle that we are supposed to be promoting.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I completely agree because that's the thing. Like having experienced a lot of the places, like when I spent quite a few months in the States, although I still relatively tried to eat healthy, it was cheaper not to be healthy
Mhm.
because it was all like you go to a Whole Foods and go get one of those pots where you can fill up, and it came to like $40, and I was like, never am I doing this again. Um, I'm not spending $40 on a salad or with like some tofu. And then everything else, like convenient food, was so much
Mhm.
cheaper. Like I could then go out and eat a meal, and it cost $10 or mid $20, obviously, and then tipping on top, which is still a mental concept to me. Especially when the server hasn't done anything because I pressed a button myself and done it all. But yeah, it's very much, it's easier to, or it's cheaper to be unhealthy, and they haven't made it accessible to be healthy. And especially when if like there was one time I drove from British Columbia to Vegas a few years back in 2 days, so I was on the road constantly, and the only thing you can really pick up is a Starbucks on like every kind of like kilometer, and also at the same time it's like McDonald's. There's no kind of way to be healthy in those. And then when you can stop in a town, for instance, sometimes you stopped and you don't realize you'd end up in a food desert, and you're kind of like, what can I eat? Like everything's like noodles and pots that you stick water on, or it's a 7-Eleven, just hot dogs and things like that. But there was no like fresh fruit or vegetables or anything else like that. And it's just, I feel like it's an entire system just kind of set up to fail for the majority, unless you've got money and can go to Erewhon, which also might make place. Like, I don't know why we're also paying $30 for smoothies.
Yeah. The discrepancy is wild, going to LA and eating at Erewhon and all these really expensive vegan restaurants, and then going to another part of the United States where you can't even get to a grocery store that has fresh produce, or you have to drive 20 miles or however long to get there. And that's also kind of why I shifted from being very specifically focused on clinical nutrition to when I worked with these people, I realized, hey, I'm advising them on eating more fruits and vegetables, but they don't have access. The cheapest thing to them is a $5 McDonald's meal because they can get a calorically high but nutrient poor meal, but they can get a lot more quantity of a burger, fries, shake than having to take the bus 20 miles away to a grocery store to buy fruits and vegetables that they cannot afford. And there's so many health disparities and things in the United States as a result of that, of these like structural determinants of health.
How do you advise somebody to be healthy or as healthy as possible in a food desert? Like, if there's no food there, like, and it is very much like it is the McDonald's, it is the KFC, it is, the Wendy's or Jumping Jacks or whatever it is, and you don't have access to food, like, how realistically can you advise somebody to be like, hey, we want to sort out your health, but with limited resources?
I don't know the answer to that. I guess it's important to meet people where they're at. So if they're, I guess you would see them into the options that they have near them, the convenience store, the restaurant, and evaluate what are the most nutrient dense foods they can get there, right? Is it a bag of nuts or a can of beans or something? And then you just help them make do with that. If it's in a part of the states where you can grow your own food, that would probably be ideal to have some kind of community garden or an individual garden where you can grow some of those fruits and vegetables for yourself, which may save money in the long run too. And it's especially difficult in the US now that there are all these cuts to food assistance or food stamps, which were making it easier for people who often couldn't afford fresh produce otherwise. Now a lot of that all of that has been cut. So people are at an even higher disadvantage in obtaining those nutrient dense foods that are going to help support their health.
Yeah, I feel like it's a hard one. Like, you can't just tell somebody to, but some of these people probably actually want to be, healthy or, change their lifestyle habits, but just don't have the access or means. So it can be very detrimental to people. There's a few things that we spoke about last time, which was, more environmental. Um, food systems, and a lot has happened since last time we spoke. Like, the world has changed more than I could have probably ever imagined in the last year. I don't think at this point, AI was a thing, but AI wasn't to the point AI is now. It moves so quickly. However, there's always that kind of argument constantly now of kind of like, hey, like AI in comparison to beef, because people will be like, oh, like, I'm going to eat beef because you're using AI. Like, it's using water. Like, we're all doing the same thing. We're all as bad as each other now. Like, every time I type an email, and maybe ChatGPT may tweak it a bit, then obviously I'm just as bad as not eating meat or eating meat. So, like, where do we kind of sit on this? Because actually, weirdly enough, I was thinking about this conversation, and then you posted something about it literally today.
Yeah. Yeah, I see this comparison all the time on social media where people are like, "Oh, you're vegan, but you still use AI or you still use technology in general because you have a phone and that requires."
Oh, the phone's a big one.
Yeah,
The phone's a big one. Yeah, that always kind of like, oh, but you're using a phone that's like doing whatever it is to the planet. I'm like,
yeah. It's just a way of undermining our argument without real rationale. And I thought, you know what, maybe there is some scientific information out there that says that AI is more environmentally impactful than beef. And I need to know, because people were mentioning this without actually citing any sources. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go and actually
what?
find the sources. And livestock, I think, emits 12 to 20% of global greenhouse gas emissions, and AI emits very little compared to that. I think it was 1 to 2% of global greenhouse gas emissions, though keep in mind that a lot of these studies took place before 2025, 2026, when AI really exploded. So I think as of right now, beef and animal agriculture in general is still a much larger environmental contributor than AI. But AI is such a new industry that its growth is just accelerating. So there is a possibility that AI will become a real burden to our environment very soon, especially if technology isn't adapted to reduce the amount of water that it's using, reduce the amount of energy that it's using. Yeah, so right now though, I would say that beef in terms of land use, in terms of water use, in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, in terms of biodiversity loss, pesticide, fertilizer, biocides is still a much larger contributor to environmental degradation than AI. But then people twist that when I say that, and they say, okay, so I can use AI all day, every day, and as long as I cut back on my beef intake, that's good. But the two aren't mutually exclusive. You can do both. You can eat less beef and also use AI less frequently.
Yeah, people always kind of like try to pour the straw out on us, kind of like, hey, like, I can do this and this from what you're saying. I'm like, but we're not saying that. We're just kind of trying to give somewhat helpful information. But for instance, like, I think I saw, obviously, I think, you know, when it comes to water, for instance, like, I don't know, hamburgers are, how was it? It's 25,000 bottles of water to make a hamburger, something like that.
Hmm.
Which is like, I don't know, or like, so a lot of gallons of water. I don't know what gallons are. I do not use those kind of measurements. I refuse to learn also. However, like, so that's, let's say, 2,500 bottles of water to make a hamburger, but me writing an email, let's say or like something on AI normally takes out a bottle of water. And it's kind of hard to try see the comparison with some of these things when people are trying to use that back. I'm just like, if it was taking up a huge amount more, then absolutely. But unless you're using it 225,000 times a day, like, we're still, as of the moment, in the lower percentage for, AI in comparison to beef, and like the amount of factory farming, the amount of cows there are for beef, for instance, in the world. If we go over just America, England, Australia, India, all those, there's a huge amount of like cows. So I don't think AI, as of the moment, as far as I know, is even near the same.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important that we keep the giant tech companies responsible, though, because just like we need to keep the animal agriculture industry accountable, we also need to do the same for these tech companies who are promising that they're going to bring water use down more. They have pilot technologies and so on that are using different kinds of coolants to reduce the amount of water that is being used by these data centers. But I don't think they're being they're being produced at a mass scale right now. I think right now most of the data centers are still using the standard technology that requires a lot of water, a lot of energy, that's fossil fuel based energy. So we need to kind of keep them accountable the way that we kind of are not able to do with the animal agriculture industry, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I think it's just holding accountability and making sure nothing kind of gets out of control. And I think we kind of lost that kind of game a long time ago with the meat industry, the dairy industry. There was no kind of accountability, and it just kind of
I
went.
was reading this review. I don't know if you saw it. They looked at 33 of the world's largest meat and dairy companies, about like 1,000 different environmental claims that they had, and they found that 98% of those claims could be categorized as greenwashing. Like I don't know if you've seen all the claims that by the meat and dairy companies that say we're going to produce net neutral climate impact by year 2030 or 2050 or whatever. But very little of that is going to come true. And then now we have these tech companies who are having those same promises of carbon neutrality by 2030 or by 2050. And so, yeah, we need to make sure that it's held accountable. Otherwise, it's just going to be another greenwashing scheme.
That's the thing. I think that's another thing that also needs to be kept accountable as well. Sometimes is the amount of greenwashing that is literally everywhere. Like, whether you look at the fashion industry, you look at like the meat industry, you look at just the fishing industry, you look at any industry, there's so much greenwashing. So it's no wonder why the general population are confused. Like, the general population have no idea where to get their clothes from or make it sustainable, so they go to Shein or Temu or whatever. The same with like McDonald's. It's the cheapest, like not the healthiest, but people don't know and don't care because they don't have that education around them. And it's just there's so much greenwashing from every single industry out there that is kind of like, unless you have the education around it, it's hard to kind of understand what's right, what's wrong, and why should I even care? I'm on this planet once, kind of thing. And I think most people is very much, hey, I'm just going to provide for myself while I'm here for the next, 80 years, and then I'm going to fuck off and not care anymore.
Yeah, yeah. It goes back to our conversation that we were having before with social media and how do people disseminate the evidence-based information from the misinformation, right? It's a similar thing with industry type claims as well. Yeah, I feel like we could both talk about that for another hour, just different strategies to figuring out what's the,
Yeah,
high quality information out there.
yeah. Weirdly enough, going back to that conversation about social media and you asking the kind of comments that I
Mhm.
get, one did actually pop up into my head a second ago, and it's the same ChatGPT um, answer every time because it's always posted, as in it's not written down, it's always like a little screenshot, and it's like, oh, plants are missing, 23 like essential vitamins, minerals, and nutrients that we need, and they always name like things that we can quite clearly get from plants. And then they'll name things like creatine and taurine and things like this. I'm like, unless you're a house cat, then taurine's not really going to be an issue. And then, they had like COQ10. And I'm just like, hmm, I don't that's the biggest priority on our list in comparison to some of the others. And then they're like, oh, zinc. Maybe zinc. Like if we're not eating the right amounts, yeah, I can get on board with that one. And then that just we'll name a ton of different things, but it's always the same quoted piece, and I get it at least 16 times a day. And I'll have to send you one later because it's kind of like, yeah, I feel like you'd be quite good at kind of ripping that one to pieces as well, or using that as a kind of series of things to kind of deconstruct. Um, because things like COQ10 and things aren't like nutrients that the large majority of people even would consider or know about.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel like if the majority of the global population struggles to meet their essential vitamins and minerals and nutrients in general, we don't need to be worrying about these conditionally essential or non-essential nutrients, right? We need to prioritize.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we sort out fiber first, but hey, like that's on the that's really low on the issues because let's all look after our choline for a
I
second.
know. And of course, we need to eat a high protein diet. Everything should have protein in it.
Oh, of course, because also if you only eat protein and never work out, you're just gonna get muscles. Like it's just dumb fuckery. It's just pure dumb fuckery, and the internet. I sometimes I just wish I could stop doing what I do, which means being online because I just get the wildest shit, and I can only imagine you probably feel the same. Sometimes it's like maybe I should just up and quit this.
Yeah, it's so overwhelming, especially when posts do well. Sometimes I kind of wish that I could go back to that, to having posts that would get 10 comments and they would all be like, "So good. You did so well." Like, um,
Ha ha ha.
instead of just like one comment after the other and one person's like arguing with the other person, then a third person jumps in, then it's like 25 people on this huge comment thread. It's just, but you know what makes it all worth it, which I know this rarely happens, but sometimes I can't get to answering comments. Okay, most of the time I really struggle to answer all of the comments. And then I'll see someone jump in and answer people's comments in an evidence-based way, like in a way that I would. And I'm just thinking, oh my God, there are other people out there who actually benefited from this information. They took something from it, and I think that makes it all worth it. And that's why we need to be on here for the people that are going to be receptive to what we have to say, and Yeah, the people who just didn't know the information. Because there are two people, like two types of people. Are people who know the information but won't change anyways, and then there are the people who just had no idea. Um, and those are the second type is the group of people that I want to reach. And
On that note, when we see people online, whether the people, that are giving evidence based and the people that are just talking shit, how do we break down the kind of telltale signs that they are just kind of maybe an influencer, maybe a health professional? Like, I think there's some kind of telltale signs that we could probably deep dive into right there, because there's definitely some that come to the top of my head, and I know there's probably some that come to the top of your head as well on things, on people getting very confused.
yeah, yeah. Do you want to start?
Yeah, let's give. Trying to think which one. Um, I think people that use correlations, like the correlation king, basically. People seeing a graph that says like seed oil consumptions cause hair loss or divorce or something like that, and treating it as like gospel truth. Just because two things happened at the same time doesn't mean that one causes the other. But shark attacks go up when ice cream sales go up.
Hmm.
I mean, magnums make you shark bait. Shark bait. It's just coincidence, and people use that kind of the most random correlations to kind of push forward an agenda.
Hmm.
So if anybody, without actually showing any kind of evidence of correlation, um, then I think that would be my first one.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. Um, and also, we see the carnivore influencers who are always like, oh, correlation is not causation. You use observational studies which have no merit. And I want to like be clear that those studies do have merit, but they need to be cited so we actually know what is the correlation. And it's not just that it like one thing and the other thing, if they happened at the same time, that they caused each other or they're correlated with each other. We need to make sure that like if there are correlational studies being used, that they are high quality and they are being cited so we can make sure that that information is correctly used.
Mm. I think as you just mentioned though, with some of the carnivore communities, no matter what kind of study you put in front of them, they will never believe a single one because big pharma or big somebody has funded it, or like so. There's not a single fact, like there is not a single study they would ever believe, and it's very much on that note. I'm more happy with anecdotal evidence, which is also another one.
Yeah, yeah. It's anecdotal evidence should not be believed in it and of itself. That's a good one. I would also say, like, nutrition is rarely binary. So it is rare to see that one thing causes another thing, or like yes or no, right? And people are uncomfortable with the nuance. People are uncomfortable with the fact that multiple things can be partially true. They want to believe that, for example, like broccoli causes cancer or broccoli doesn't cause cancer or whatever. But the reality is that there's so many other things to consider, right? There's a lot of nuance with that.
Hmm. I think also people using words, and this goes into all of them as well, is proven,
Hmm.
or kind of this has been proven. This has been like nothing's proven. Like we could all be wrong. Like at one point, but that is science. Nothing gets proven. It's very much it's we're seeing things, but we cannot do a definitive.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess it's also, we can tell a lot about the credentials or the credibility of a person by the language that they use. So if they, for example, if they say broccoli has been proven to cause cancer, then that would be, that would probably not be something you want to believe. Or even broccoli has been proven to reduce the risk of cancer. We can't really say that either. We can just say that research suggests. So suggests, may show, may indicate, those kinds of things. There has to be some kind of probability within that, rather than absolute certainty, which we can never achieve 100% certainty in science.
And that's and we I would say there's a lot of actual MDs that have said proven in the past on their videos. Paul Saladino. And like for someone, but also he's a psychiatric nurse. I don't know whether we should really be taking, advice from him. But also with somebody that's had that amount of training, they should probably know that proven is not the right word to be using if you kind of want credibility. But also at the same time, you don't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess it also goes to show that there is no scientific source that they are directly citing from. Because if they were, then in the publications itself, it says increase the risk of, decrease the risk of, correlated with, or there is a relationship between, but it never says, in any of these publications, the language is never that this diet is proven to reduce cardiovascular disease, or whatever. It's usually just increase or decrease or likely, unlikely, those kinds of language.
I think people that say studies show and then don't actually show the study.
Yeah.
They're like, they're like studies show. I'm like, what study? Like you can name all studies, but we need a study.
I know, I know. That's another great way to tell if someone cites their sources or if they don't.
There's, I think people that also, the people that come out and being like, doctors don't want you to know.
Yeah.
Like, like they've got this secret knowledge, their hidden secret knowledge scam that everybody is on in this giant conspiracy, and doctors don't want you to know this, nutritionists don't want you to know this. Like, not everybody is under this whole illusion.
Yeah, yeah. It's hard because you see greater distrust in science as a whole. So nowadays, just saying, "Oh, I have a master's, I have this degree, I have this credential," or even including these scientific sources are often not enough because people don't believe in those things anymore. They, which is, it's really hard for me to comprehend that. But
I mean, you did go to uni, and that's funded by Big Broccoli, and Big Broccoli is like controlled by like some other kind of the Rothschilds or whatever I keep seeing online, or something wild like that, and like it's all made to, so we're all in the same kind of, so all showing that we're all being made to be poor, stupid, and dumb, and not thrive because we're all being under the same conspiracy. It's fucking wild. Like there was that guy, Jacob, in the States
yeah,
that he had his account taken down because apparently he was being a terrorist. He was just somebody that's got like a qualification and was just sharing knowledge and started eating more soy, and then kind of had his account taken down. And I think that sounds like a bigger conspiracy, is trying to shut this one guy up.
Yeah, that's wild. I don't think
It's
he ever got his account back.
He didn't. He actually started a new one. And it got taken down 2 days later. Then he started a new one. Didn't do any nutrition on it. Did one nutrition post the other day and
Oh
got
my
taken down.
God.
Yeah, I actually quite enjoy his content because he's very open minded. He also shows the science stuff, like also showing that soy being good for you, things like this. I started eating more soy, and yeah, he's getting a lot of shit from it. But doesn't get taken down on TikTok though. TikTok don't care. TikTok let anything happen
Yeah.
on there.
Yeah, TikTok is just a wild, wild place to be.
Mm. Have you got any more on that? Because I've actually written down a few while we were speaking that I think may be useful for people.
Um, I mean, I think also just the confirmation bias, like I guess people have to ask themselves, because they often trust a person that's supporting their claim or their ideology. But would they trust that exact influencer or study if it supported the complete opposite claim? Or, it's a good way to determine whether they're trusting the claim just because they like the person who said it or because it actually has scientific merit.
Mm. And I think that actually plays into my next one, which is the cherry
Hmm.
picker, the person that's only cherry picking certain bits for their confirmation bias. Because the one study you can say it's completely the opposite, but one sentence is like, it does this. And they're like, oh my God, I found the one.
Yeah.
This actually happened the other day to me. Somebody was like, omega seed oils cause inflammation, and omega 6s and omega 3 to 6 ratio, which omega 3 to 6 ratio, yes, absolutely a thing. However, they pointed out one sentence in the study. I opened up the study, and it was it was about seed oils and deep fat fryers. Yes, it's going to be harmful to you, probably due to the fact that you're eating from a Taco Bell, and it's been in a vat for 2 weeks on end, constantly on
Hmm.
heat. Probably not the best, but use that to be like, oh, seed oils are like real bad for you, but then I don't think expected or hadn't read the study himself to really he just read the kind of like the title, um, and very much came up with it, kind of debunked what he was saying himself, which I love. That's my favorite thing that happens when they post something and it debunks what they've said entirely because they hadn't actually read the
Yeah.
study.
Yeah, no, it's the best. And maybe that's why they don't post any sources because they know what's going to happen.
Exactly that, and that was posted to me by a 16-year-old looks maxer, and I was like, "Oh, here we go." And that's all I needed to know before I knew the study was going to be shit. The study wasn't shit in any way, shape, or form. It just didn't say what he wanted it to say. But also, whenever anybody has looks maxing and please like ascending your well-being in their bio, I'm like,
Hmm.
we're out.
Yeah.
This is shit. Um, I think as well, there's people not knowing when people are like, oh, this is clinically studied or doctor
Mhm.
formulated, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be true. Because, for instance, like I could start a clinic and give a pill that I've made in my basement to 3 people, and one of them that says they feel more energized. And I'll be like, well, 1 in 3 people feels more energized. That's literally how they work. And then I could get Sarah, for instance, if she's got a doctorate, not in anything to do with nutrition, and be like, it's doctor approved. Like what are the doctors a doctorate in? It could be like paleontology,
Yeah.
like a doctor of dinosaurs. Like I think people don't realize that there's a clinic doesn't really mean anything. and then a doctorate title does mean something to the the profession it's in. However, they can use that to then be like, yeah, that is it's a credible supplement, for instance, when they might not have a nutrition or dietetics or anything degree.
Yeah, it can be taken and used however it wants. And with the credentials too, there are often no regulations or very loose regulations for even using certain labels or things like on products and things. This is a whole other conversation, the regenerative agriculture grass-fed thing, but people are always like, oh, but my meat or my dairy is grass-fed. But there are no regulations for using the term grass-fed on labels after after 2016, at least, when the USDA revoked their certification program. So it just means that the cow needs to be fed grass for a portion of their lives. It doesn't mean, yeah, like they can just be given grass for like a couple days and then they can just go back to eating grains for the rest of their lives. They don't even have to be out in a pasture or anything. They can just be like thrown grass into their stalls or their barn or whatever. So if people don't understand how these certifications come to play, then they may just blindly believe them because they assume that they are correct.
That's very much goes into like people with the kind of Dunning-Kruger effect of kind of thinking they know the absolute everything, and because they're so confident with what they think they know, that it can come across like very, very kind of like substantial actual information, but normally it's not. And that's, I think, going straight back to RFK. He's walking Dunning-Kruger effect. Like the guy talks more shit than anyone else on the planet, I think. Oh, apart from Trump also, I think. But those two hand in hand talk a lot of crap.
Yeah.
And it is very much a effect.
And then on the other hand, you have the highly qualified people who are afraid to speak because they still feel like they don't know enough, which is so many of my friends and colleagues who've been dietitians for years and years, and they're like, oh, I could never do what you do, even though they have so much more experience than me. And there's so many unqualified people on there. So it goes both ways.
That's the thing. And I think as well, like, I think majority of people that have a good understanding or know will happily admit when they don't know something instead of going from completely making it up. And that is another thing that bring up. Like, you're probably very happy saying that I don't know, or I was wrong, and some people aren't happy to say they were wrong about something. Like, I did a post a few months ago about that I was wrong about selenium. But I happily did a post on it to be like, hey, I was wrong, like on a certain part of it, because there was new evidence out. However, some people won't go and backtrack on the things. They just kind of let it out there and just kind of leave it to kind of like, get bigger and bigger and kind of spiral out of control instead of saying, hey, maybe there is something wrong here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to tell someone who has scientific integrity and humility versus someone who doesn't, because they will be the first to say, this is not my area of expertise, but what I can tell you is this, or I can point you to an expert who does know this. So,
Yeah, and this is kind of where it ends up going into, like, the people kind of like the Paul Saladinos or the Dr. Klutz or any of those, where every time they change their eating pattern, they'll be like, this is the best that is the best diet for human beings. I'm like, but you said that for every different variation of diet that you've done. You did it carnivore, then you did it carnivore and fruit, you did it carnivore, fruit, raw honey, and raw milk, and now you're doing it animal-based with
Mm.
squash, and now animal-based with vegetables, which, surprise, surprise, is basically an omnivore, which is the majority of the population.
Yeah, yeah. And also, once again, using that certainty kind of terminology, the best,
Mm.
the only, that kind of thing, not leaving any room for probability or uncertainty or, yeah.
Mm. Yeah, well, I think he's also gone on into other trends now of saying that like receipts are going to kill you, and like as soon as the food thing didn't work for him anymore, it was receipts. It was touching aluminium or aluminum, like what else like that is going to kill you. So it's gone completely the other route now, and it's kind of, I think at the moment, also losing his credibility because I think people are now seeing.
Mm.
There's only so many times you can change your persona before you kind of get caught out.
Yeah, yeah. I guess if it's very obvious, then people will catch on.
Mm. And with social media being how it is these days, and us being public facing constantly through a screen, that is quite easy to kind of, especially if you change your messenger and you think someone from a year down the line probably wouldn't remember it, those people still remember, like a lot of the time. Like I've seen people get called out for something they said 2 years ago, and this is kind of, I've got an issue at the moment with a certain supplement brand actually coming out of Los Angeles, who are now selling a vegan collagen. However, the owner of that posted a picture, which I've got a screenshot about 3 years ago. I screenshotted it for some reason, and I still have it, and I've just got it as like blackmail. I'm never going to use it. But being like, vegan collagen doesn't exist, it can't exist, and then as soon as it's a money maker, they have a vegan collagen brand now. Same person.
Of course
Yeah.
they do.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe I'll call that one out on the podcast one day, but at the moment that's very much, inside my phone. However, Sapna, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here again. For the people who are hearing you for the first time, or are now hearing you for a second time but still aren't following you and don't know where you are, where can people find you?
So my username has not really changed. It's still Health by Sapna, and that's on Instagram and TikTok now. And then also my website is healthbysapna.com.
Amazing. Well, Sapna, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was so great to talk to you and to catch up once again, Callum.